right, well, good afternoon, everybody. So where did we leave off? Okay, we left off right here, and now it's got 5 coats of that wipe-on poly. So I'll zoom in here for you to take a look at it in a sec, but what we're going to do next is I'm going to reverse this whole thing so that the mouth is here, and I'm going to use this that I showed you in that last video. This is like a hexagon bar. Got a couple set screws here where I can adjust this. This will go into the mouth. I'll show you here in a minute when I line it up. And I'm going to reverse it because we're going to take the bottom off and we're going to start to go ahead and finish out the bottom of this. And so I had questions along the way, like, well, how are you going to do it? And I told them out at the club when I was there, because they were watching the other videos, there are many ways to do it, but I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so I got the bar mounted in there. I loosened up the set screws. Now I'm going to put that on the other end. Alright, here's the wood vessel, and I went ahead and I took the chuck off. I'm going to put the mouth of it like this with the bar. And I'm going to bring the tailstock up, and I'm going to line up right there. It's got a little center mark on it still from when it was chucked up earlier. I'm going to lock the tailstock, give it just a tiny turn. Now I'm going to come up and I'm going to set this cone just like this, and I push on it, and I know that I'm at the bottom down here with the bar. The bar is actually hitting the bottom. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to tighten the set screws up. Now I can apply pressure from the tailstock. I always turn it by hand. Seems to be pretty square. And I can tighten up the tailstock now because that bar is hitting the bottom and it's actually just compressing in here. Now, I'm going to use what I call an indexing tool. You can use any tool you want. And I'm going to get off the majority of all of this wood so that I can reach in here and sand the bottom before I part it off. I'll be right with you. I'll show you. Indexing tool looks like this. It's got a 3/16 high-speed steel tip, and it's got a big handle. So I'm going to use that to take this off. Now you don't have to. You could also use a gouge. You could use pretty much any tool at this point that you wanted. The gouge. Or, like I said, I like using the index tool. I can get closer to that bottom, but it's up to you. That's small enough because I have some cracks in this bigger piece of wood, and I'll show you here in just a sec. See where that chunk came out, and I've got a crack running down. So I don't want to get this all the way down and part it off just with a cutting tool. So I'll get it down about this far where I still got some good support. Now I want to clean this up and I want to sand this. So what I'm going to use is the sharpest tool I have, or sharpen one. In this case, I'm going to use the carbide cutter again. I'm going to make it a little concave. I'm going to make it like, so it's like this, and that way it's easier to make it sand and sit flush, and it just turns out a little bit better visually. So I'll show you. Now, I stop it once in a while and I feel it. And I can feel it's still got a little bit of a hump coming out this way. From about right here down. So that's okay. Okay, and I pretty much got that out, and now it feels good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to sand right in here with that 150 before we take it all the way off. It's got some tear out right here real bad. We'll have to work on that. But for right now, we'll stick with the 150. After time, you're going to get it as smooth as you want right here, and I feel the concave, everything's great. I'm going to cut this off, okay? And then I'll work on getting that nub down and sanding the final sanding. Like I said, there is a crack here, so I want to be careful because I don't want to ruin this. Now, I know a lot of guys will use the lathe to do this. I don't. I just leave it off, and I can sit here and say, okay, well, like right about here. You don't want to go up too much, you'll scrape the wood. So I'm going to be down here just a bit. All right. Loosen the tailstock. That comes right off. Now we have to do is we got to get rid of this nub, and we got to finish sand all this. I'll show you how we'll do that in just a sec. Okay, so I got a drill press, and I have about a 2-inch round padded disc on this drill press, and it's got a 60 grit piece of sanding paper there, and that will take that center out real quickly, and then I'll switch to 80, 120, 150, and then I'll show you what we'll do from there. Okay, and you can see here where I have it nice and flat now. Okay, so that's 80 grit, and I got it nice and flat and level, and now I'm going to change that sanding disc out to 150. I'm dealing in a real small area, so I can make a bigger jump in grits. I'll spend a little bit more time, but I'll make sure that we get it perfectly nice and smooth at 150. Okay, so I got it up to 150. It's nice and smooth. I put it on a flat surface, and it doesn't rock and move around. Now, if it was to rock and move around, you could get a square piece of sandpaper on a flat board and just sit here and scrub it back and forth, turn it and keep scrubbing it, and it will level that out. But in this case, because I sanded it to about here on the lathe, and I took it off, got rid of that nub, and then I sanded out that nub and made it nice and smooth, we're home free and we're fine. But you can correct it by scrubbing it on a flat piece of wood with sandpaper. Not a problem. Okay, so this is where we are now. Let's go back. Let me show you what we're going to do next. Okay, so here we are, and it sits nice and flat. And so what am I going to do next? I want to control the pith. Now the pith is dead center, usually like in a log or pretty close to center. And it's where everybody worries about cracking, because that's where it'll crack at almost all the time. Now what I did on this is I know that I'm down to about, let's say, less than a half an inch, let's say, somewhere less than that. And I used a Forstner bit, and I don't know if you can see it, I'll try to zoom in. Okay, and on the bottom. Now, I'm gonna take CA glue, and I'm gonna drizzle some on the top here, and I'm gonna let it soak in. And that's gonna cover that pith area. And CA glue is incredibly strong, but it's brittle, but it'll be fine on the inside of this. Then I'm going to at least put 1 or 2 coats on the very base of this for 2 reasons. One, between putting it on the inside, letting it soak in that way, and me rubbing it in from the bottom, it creates this incredibly strong bond, and I have not had any problems with, we're talking about mesquite wood, with them cracking at the pith. It's just what I do. There are probably other techniques that people can drop in the comment below, but it's the way I do it. Let's go ahead, let's get after it, and let's go from there. Now, one of the questions I get asked, frequently out at the club is, what kind of CA glue do I use? I don't use the glues from Harbor Freight, the CA glues. All CA glues, the cyanoacrylate glue, they are not made the same, and they are not made to the same quality control standards. I use Star Bond or Stick Fast. This is Stick Fast. I'll leave you the links on what I use below in the description. You can click on them, and you'll actually get more than your money's worth by buying a little bit larger container. Now, the other thing I do, I leave it sealed in the baggie that it comes in when I'm done using it, And I put it in my outside refrigerator. It tends to keep it really strong for a longer period of time. I don't have any scientific proof. I just know, like I said, that's what works. So I go ahead and I cut this tip off pretty much like at an angle. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. Set it down, look inside, and swirl it around that pith area. And I can see it absorbed it almost right away. So I put some more in there. Okay, and I let it sit there and I let it soak in, and I keep looking at it until I know that it's stopped soaking in. Sometimes, depending on how thin you are here at the bottom, you'll actually see it seep through. If you do, that's even better because it's actually getting in between those wood fibers, you know, and those pores, and locking it. And then that way when you do it on the opposite side, it locks it in, like I said, even tighter. I can see down below there are a few spots there where they're damp, which means the CA glue has come through in a couple of areas, but not everywhere, but that's okay. I'll show you what we're going to do. I'm going to zoom in here in just a sec. Okay, so on a towel, I'm going to flip this upside down now. All right, now I'll zoom in and I'll show you. Okay, so right here was that area. Here's the pith. You can see where it actually started to crack, and it stops about right here, stops about right here. I've soaked the bottom and I can see the bleed through. Now I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to put it all along this crack right here for right now. I'm going to let it soak back in and go the other way now. I'll watch it for a few seconds and it's soaked in. Now what I can do is I can sprinkle some of this sanding dust just like this if you want to. Okay, now turn around, drizzle it like this again. Now, when this glue interacts with the glue that I put in through the bottom, it's not going to crack any farther. It won't. I've got many projects where I've never had to worry about them, years old, sitting in on the shelf, and it's not going to. But right now, what you want to let this do, this stuff will dry almost instantaneously. There are times on wood after you're putting on more than one coat, it's going to take a little bit longer. When this finishes drying, I'm going to take it back over the sander, sand it, and I'll be right back with you. I'll show you what it looks like, and I'll show you how we're going to finish the rest of the bottom. Okay, so I sanded it again with the 150, and I got it to where if you run your finger across it, nice, smooth, no problems. Okay, now, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put a coat of CA glue on here, and then I'm going to hit it with 320, 220, 320. I'll do it again, and then 320 if I use, the 220. Okay, so I sanded it with 150. Now I'm going to put CA glue over this whole bottom. I'm going to let it set up. I'm going to put a rubber glove on, and you'll have to work quick because it'll begin to even burn through the rubber glove, but you can use a piece of cloth with this. You just don't want it to stick to your fingers. All right, I sanded it all down. It's all nice and smooth again. It sits nice and straight. So now what I'm going to do, now that I've gotten rid of the look of most of that crack, I'm going to put some CA glue up here on the top. Put a nice little puddle of it. Then I got a cloth and I have a rubber glove on. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start rubbing it round. Now you got to be careful. Let's see, look at that. It's starting to smoke. It gets real hot and it'll burn you. So flip it over. Put a little bit more on there. And if the cloth gets too hard, you just have to get another one. Put it on there till it kind of either slows down or almost comes to a stop. It's like this. You can see the dry spots. And you just leave it alone. This stuff will set up rock hard real fast. Okay, and now I can feel it. There is nothing there that's wet. It is totally set up hard. So I've got some, well, let's see, that's 400. Let's see what this is. 320. 320 will work. And then I'm going to do this. Okay, so you're going to get a bunch of white powder on there, so I turn around, I just take a dried little rag of some kind or a shop towel, wipe it off real good, and you feel the bottom of this and it is almost like glass right now. But remember, we only put one coat of that CA glue on there, and I want to put 2, maybe 3. Now it's going to give you the same kind of shine as the wipe-on poly, if that's all that you want to do. Or you can go over this, which I will do, with probably 1 coat of wipe-on poly, but I at least want a couple of coats of the CA glue on the bottom. So again, make a little puddle here, use a clean cloth. You can see right now it's just sitting there, it's not soaking in like it did before. And we're going to turn around, and you can do this fairly quickly this time. That was one towel. It kind of got real hot, so I had to stop. I put a little bit more CA glue on there. Hit my wadded up little cloth here. Alright, and like I said, it almost instantly dries. Now this time, I'm going to sand it again with 320, and then I'm going to put a coat of poly on there. Then we're done with this, and we're going to leave it alone. The more coats you put on there, it takes a little bit longer to dry. Alright, so when it's totally dry, I'm going to sand it with 320, I'm going to clean it off, I'm going to put 2 coats of poly on there, and we are done with the vessel part of this. Then we need to work on the lid. That will be on the next video. So that's all I'm going to do to this, and I'll show it to you when I'm completed here in just a minute. Okay, second coat. Nice, slick, smooth, feels good, level still, everything's good. And the CA glue acts kind of like, I don't want to say a sanding sealer, but it kind of does. Fills the pores, helps to level the surface. It also gives it a lot of strength because of what we did by dripping it on the inside. And now we're ready for the wipe-on poly. And so we're going to do 2 coats of wipe-on poly. And I may not do anything between coats. It just depends on how it sets up. I just put a little bit on a rag. And here we go. Like I said, with the wipe-on poly, I put it on, go in the direction of the wood, and then I don't touch it. Just leave it alone. Let it set up. I'll be back with you here in just a bit. And remember, when you're done using your stick fast or your Star Bond, put the lid back on it, put it in the baggie, put it in the refrigerator. It will last you much longer with good strength. It begins to lose strength over time if you just let it sit out. It'll still work kind of, but not as good as when you first bought it. But like I said, it's my own experiment. I found by just keeping it in the refrigerator, it tends to last much, much longer because I don't use it all the time. So, all right, see you in a minute. All right, while we're waiting for this to dry, I was going to tell you about another product out at the club that they demonstrated. It's been probably 6-8 months ago, and that's, and I'll leave you a link below, it's made by True Power. It's a rechargeable spot sprayer. You can go ahead with compressed air, compress it here, and it's got a pop off, so you don't need to worry about overfilling it. And it'll tell you, you fill it up to probably where it says rechargeable, somewhere in there. That's what I do. I buy WD-40 by the gallon, and I put it in here, and it's an enormous cost savings over time if you use WD-40 to any degree. The other thing is, I got another one around here. I also put mineral spirits in it. Now, dollar store is actually cheaper. You could just use those little, pump bottles like I showed you after you've used the product, but it's handy. So I got a couple of them. Thought I'd share them with everybody. Anyway, links are below. You can read more about it. Just be careful what you put in here. Somebody put acetone or something, real caustic in these, and then they wrote a really bad review saying that, well, gee, that straw that comes down, that plastic kind of a straw that goes all the way down to the bottom, it didn't hold up. In other words, it got all eaten up and corroded and whatever. I don't know what you're putting in them, but if you stick with simple things like, you could probably get away with lacquer thinner. I haven't tried it yet, but I have used mineral spirits and definitely WD-40. Anyway, just thought I'd mention it. Okay, so several hours has gone by. This is nice and dry now. I felt it. There's really no circulation. I don't have any dust particles. I don't have anything on there. If you did, you could hit it with 4/0 steel wool, clean it real good, or maybe 400 grit sandpaper, 600, whatever, and get those little dust particles off. But now it's time to put that second coat on there, which is probably going to be the final coat. So okay, there you go. And now I'm going to just let it dry. And we're done with the vessel itself now. So next video, we're going to make the lid for it. And then that will complete the project. And we're going to use a lot of the same techniques and ways of doing it that I did on this in terms of the sanding and the finish and make it all look the same. And we'll use the calipers and we'll use some other new tools. But that's it for this. It turned out great. And let's take a look. And I think it'll look good. Okay, I'll see you folks on the next video. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.